having us. Like she said, my name is Laura, and I've been playing the violin since I was 3 years old. And both Ben and I teach at Jupiter Academy of Music, and we've put together this really exciting program, hopefully to give you a little bit of new knowledge about music. And so we're going to go ahead and flip to the next one, and we're going to start a journey through time. So if you haven't seen one before, that on the top is a time machine. So imagine that we're going to get in our time machine and travel through time. We're going to visit 4 of the musical eras, starting with the Baroque period, and then the Classical period, the Romantic period, and the 20th century. So, if we start with the Baroque period, we're going to present to you a piece by Johann Sebastian Bach. You might have heard of him already, maybe played some of his music. Let's go ahead and flip to the next one. Before we start Bach's piece, I want to give you a little bit of a history about the violin. This is a modern violin, and I want to show you how the violin has changed over time, so the evolution of the violin. The top picture is one of the very first violin-like instruments, and you can't really tell in the picture, but the body is a coconut. So this was a coconut body with strings, and that was one of the first instruments that was similar to the violin. Then we move on down to the European rebec, and you can see the bow, which is on the top, is shaped very much differently than my bow. So the bows used to have a very large arc, and then the modern bow has a more straight stick. And then the European fiddle had 5 strings, but the modern violin has 4 strings. And then the viola d'amore was the closest to the modern violin, and that was in Europe in the 1500s and the 1600s. So I have tuned already, but Tammy told me that you guys might be interested in how the violin is tuned. It has 4 strings, and that's these notes down at the bottom. So the lowest string is G, and then D, A, and E. And so the violin is tuned in fifths, obviously, so each note is 5 notes apart. When I tune, Ben plays an A on the piano, and I match my A to his note, and then I play the 2 strings together, and I listen for the even sound.
A and D?
That's A and D together. So if I make it too low, you can sound that it sounds dissonant, and then I bring it up slowly until it falls into the right pitch. And then I do that on every string and match the A and the E last, because the E is the smallest string and it'll go out of tune really easily. So if I've tuned all the other strings, then I go back to E, it might be out of tune again. So I always save the E to tune last. So that's just a little bit about my violin. You'll get to hear it again in a minute. Now I want to talk about the piano. So the original name of the piano was piano forte. It was the first instrument that could both play quiet and loud. So it could go through all the dynamic ranges, starting with piano, mezzo piano, forte, fortissimo, one instrument. Before the piano was the harpsichord, and the harpsichord only had one dynamic. The Bach piece that we're going to play was originally played on a harpsichord, and now it's played on the piano, which can do all of the different dynamics. Cristofori was the inventor of the piano, and this is one of his original pianos. There are only, I have to find
We went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City last year. Who went on that trip? And remember, we went and saw the instruments. We went inside and we made a beeline, and so we saw.
You saw one of these pianos? That's excellent. Wonderful. So that's one of the originals. Now, they started out with only 4 octaves of keys, and now the modern piano has 7 octaves, which is 88 keys. The piano can play low notes and high notes, so it can play as low as a tuba. You want to play some really, really low notes down there? Okay. And it can play as high as a piccolo, so a lot of composers love to sit down at the piano because they, even if they're writing an orchestral part, they can play all of the different instruments on one instrument, on the piano. And so Ben's going to have a lot of fun imitating an entire orchestra today. All right, so that's just a little bit about the piano. And now we're going to go on because we need to get started here. So we are going,